Take me to the sea, wash away my worries, let my soul be free. Take me to the ocean, take me to the sea, wash away my worries, let my soul be free.
Hello world, I'm Mhax. Back in IRL, I go by Curtis. Welcome to another episode of the State Copy Podcast. As always, I'll remind you to review episode 0 and its appended segments for terms, conditions, and disclosures applicable to the entirety of this content. Thank you. Well, hey everybody, happy Sunday. It's Sunday, April 2nd, about 2 in the afternoon local. I haven't been podcasting much this week. I've been really just trying to focus on being a good dad and a good friend, lover, all of my roles that I think I take much more seriously than this whole podcasting one I recently adopted. But I'm also sort of, I felt like I kind of needed a break from, all of finance and global macro and geopolitics. I find this time really interesting, and I felt like I suddenly started paying really close attention to all of it, right as Silicon Valley Bank crashed and burned a couple weeks back. I feel like that's kind of a Bear Stearns moment, and I'm curious when the Lehman moment is. And so I felt like it was appropriate to spend a bunch of time on my show. I don't know, just kind of talking about that, talking about how I view it. And I'm kind of at peace, like it's exciting to watch, but I find it emotionally a little bit draining just because as I absorb all of the rich material, I can't, like, I try and tune my empathy up to maximum. I'm really trying to soak in not just what people are saying, but how they're saying it and their emotional state. And I'm trying to read all that because I think it's vital knowledge to that process. And it just kind of like, God, it's a bit much right now. Everybody's so tuned up and nervous, and everybody's sure they're right, or sure the other the people betting against them are wrong, and it's, I don't know. It just feels a bit overwhelming to one who's trying to synthesize what everybody's saying into a single picture. So yeah, I took a few days off, and so yesterday was April Fool's, and for somebody like me who has a hard time reading a sentence and getting I can really start drilling into like a single tweet somebody says, and it's a fun game for me to try and view it from every single angle. And on April Fool's, it's particularly interesting because there's people trying to speak in ironies. And one of my favorite ones, I didn't really spend a lot of time on it, but I noticed Eric Weinstein and Dr. Brian Keating, they put out a video yesterday, and it looks like sort of a tongue-in-cheek thing they're doing about April Fools, but then I think, like, as I listen to it, parts of it are Eric speaking authentically about geometric unity, I think. I'm really just composing with the passion that I see in another human for like something that I can, like, it's his life's work. And so I'm accepting without any knowledge of the math, any of the specific knowledge of the math, And I'm trying to do an abstraction of that. So when he makes a joke, I'm not optimized for, being able to, I guess, critically, like I don't know how those equations work and I don't want to learn them. I feel like that's not what I'm optimizing for, as I said. So it's like I can't get where there's a joke in it or where there's not. But I think he is legitimately trying to get people to look at it. And I love how harmony plays such a huge part of his theory. Like he's basically trying to so in this one of my favorite things I heard Eric Weinstein ever say is that he takes seriously as he tries to look for an abstraction that's of higher order of like the standard model and sort of reconciling standard, not just standard model, Einstein's, not so Einstein's box of thought that he's painted us all into. As he tries to look for something that can be compatible, critical with all the ways it needs to, so that the physics and all the math lines up properly, but introduces new opportunities. And the reason why I don't think this was totally a joke is as I look at, like the comparison with the gauge transformation that he did with finance, basically income versus inflation, and how you just like change, like by shifting like the substrate the graph is painted on, in order to align it to where everything works. And like there's something beautiful there and I can see it. But it's vague and it's so opaque. It's because it's like it's written in a foreign language is what it is. But I'm getting the broad strokes, and they harmonize with the picture. I'm trying to do something very similar in constructing some understanding of what this all is and how it works. But I'm doing it through a computer science lens. I'm basically I'm looking at this universe I'm writing in and saying it's not sacrilege or ridiculous to allow myself to indulge in the idea that I can build a cohesive, coherent structure that abstracts away all of the complexity enough to where my simple mind can comprehend it. I think that's actually a lot of what we're here to do, is to try and become cognitively complex enough as a swarm, as a hive, to all line up, harmonize a view of what everything is that understands deeply what we are, what the universe is, how it works. So I feel like it's appropriate to do, and it's fun. I like it. If you become addicted to knowledge, making that a thing that you want to try and figure out is awesome. Like there's so much information to try and gorge on, to try and drive that little hobby forward. So, I'm working all the time on something that I think I can just compose with. I think a lot of the universe is just being this thing that a whole bunch of cognitive agents stacked on top of each other are agreeing to at the same time, but we're feeding in a rules engine that has wild complexity, that's compressed down and can be described with mathematics and physics. So this work these guys are doing is like vital. But what I'm doing is I'm just saying, okay, the most coherent view that all of humanity can agree to for all of physics and mathematics and spirituality, all of it. The one thing we can all agree to as a rules engine is being fed into this thing. And all of these layers of cognitive agents that might look like a stacks of atoms, and then molecules, cells in a body, and then me, and then maybe AI. That's how I've begun to sort of look at the universe. And it's fun. I recommend this. So I find myself starving for conversation with these types in a way where we just kind of, we respect that we both have something valuable to contribute to a really important conversation. Like we all bring in insights that will productively, that can, like the only way like no one neuron in this great big thing gets to decide how to interpret the rules engine. It's a dance we're all doing together. And even the folks that aren't directly participating are participating by driving all of the humans around them that are directly participating, like the Eric Weinsteins, the Sabine Hofstetters, all of these people. They are like, we're all in a big dance together, and we're all doing this thing together. And I just think that's a really productive way to look at it. So while I'd love to talk to these folks, because I don't have a PhD in theoretical physics and all that, we can't talk. That's unfortunate, but I'm cheating through this podcast because maybe, just maybe, I can get somebody's attention, and I'd love to have that conversation. And I don't, this is like a fun thing to do with my time, I think. Like I have no ambitions about any of this. I mean, I do think that like a core component of my thesis of all of this is that we all do have to agree at the end. And if we can't agree, then I don't think the simulation stops. I think it just deletes us and it moves to the next group of cognitive agents. So I don't know. Like, I think, so I do have, because I think that's important, and because I think that's how it works, and because I think it'd be fun to just jam, like picture a bunch of geeks trying to do what the Beatles did, sit around and just jam together as creatively as possible from all kinds of different schools. So like you get I feel like I'm more philosopher than anything with a computer science background. And you get the physics geeks and the math geeks. You get us all together, and you even get the folks in spiritual circles that are looking at spirituality in a productive, harmonious way, I would say, because I see a lot of the same as I look at both communities. The way I look at everybody, I see some of the same dysfunction in that community, where it's credit seeking, it's twisting important memes from our ancient past to suit a narrative that I don't know, can be exploited. I feel like that's where a lot of all of the bad that comes from that people seem to have for folks. But critically, all of us have to agree or we don't get to continue. We need to harmonize on one view of what all this stuff is. I think as I look at theories of everything, the problem I see with like the physics and math guys is I just don't think anybody's going to pay attention to them. I just think we need to create an abstraction that everybody else can just say, okay, all of the people that look at physics and math agreed to this set of principles for the rules engine that drives this. Can we just accept that that's a thing for how this all works? I think that's the best we're going to ever do for getting the other 99% of the world on board with any idea. any harmonized 100% consensus view of what this all is and how it all works. So it's important to do this. Like, it's important for all of these the philosophy communities, the spirituality community, the academia in all of its different schools. We all need to like get together and just hang out for a while and talk through ideas where we mutually respect each other. I would love to inspire that somehow. Like, if anybody ever wants to just have a conversation because I don't care about recognition. I'm kind of allergic to it, actually. So if you want to just jam over a Zoom call, I'd love that. That'd be so much fun. I'd love to see where our ideas overlap and how we can spin them around into dimensions where they fit together. That's so cool to me. It's such a fun idea. So I think I'll end here, but I'm going to append a capture I did last Sunday. So that I created it March 26th after I watched some of Dr. Brian Keating's shows. I watched 2 of his shows, one with Sabine Hofstetter and one with Alan Lightman. I think that's his name. I don't know. I'm going to tack that on. Quick disclaimer. I had to rebuild all of my my local OS and build it from scratch, and I've had pretty shit audio for my last several captures. I think I have that problem solved. I'm even going to up my game a little bit with some new hardware that I think that'll fix it. But this first 15 minutes or so, I think should be okay. The sound and video should be good. And but this next segment that I tack on, you're probably going to have to tune up the volume a little bit, and I saturate the audio in a couple places. Sorry about that. I still feel like the content is pretty worthy of review. So I touch on several things that folks in the academic community, the philosophic community, like, I think check it out. That would make me happy. But sorry, the audio is kind of shit. And I hate putting cuts in any of my content. I just feel like it sabotages authenticity when we do these chopped up, and the best creators out there in this YouTube world, the Mr. Beasts, are going to tell you, oh, you got to edit. That's critical. But the problem is, I'm trying to do something totally different. I don't care about, like, I'm just doing polish because I realize it's necessary to speak in a public forum. Like, nobody can hear you unless you have a certain amount of polish. So I'm cool with that. But I try not to put any chops or edits so that you can just see this is authentically how I think. And I'm not like taking 12 seconds and then another 14 seconds for a carefully prepared script. I'm speaking authentically from the heart every time I talk to all of you. This is how I think. And my show is called State Copy Podcast because I'm trying to capture how I think and upload it to the cloud. So I got to put a chop in here in the middle of this next piece because I screwed up my screen share. But as always, I'll try and keep that to very limited whenever I can. And I'll even half-ass explain it from time to time. Anyways, thanks for sitting through this first 18 minutes, and I appreciate you. And if anybody'd like to reach out to me, I think Twitter's a great way. Just do a Twitter, like, I don't have any filters or locks. I think you can just send me a Twitter message request, and I'll look through it. Like, if you're anybody who wants to just jam on theory of everything and figure out ways to align computer science and all these different fields into something cohesive, I'd love to do that. That sounds super fun. Thank you all. Let's talk about everything. I like talking about everything. So yesterday I spent some time watching a couple episodes of Professor Brian Keating's show. He did a show with Alan Lightman titled "Can Scientists Be Spiritual?" Alan Lightman, Into the Impossible podcast. And then he also, because it dovetailed really nicely with some of the thoughts I had after watching this, I watched about the first quarter, and I'll probably watch the rest because I really like Sabine Hofstetter. I watch a lot of her content. She does real great TLDRs on really complicated physics ideas, and that's what I thrive on. I love abstractions of complexity. So I really enjoy her content, and she was a guest on Dr. Brian Keating's show. And the two conversations fit together really nicely. It was called I Don't Care About Your Theory of Everything, Sabine Hofstetter, on the Into the Impossible podcast. So I enjoy scientists and physicists that are sort of open-minded and that are willing to do almost all of academia and the physics and science community. Like all of these communities have gotten very rigid and in their thought, and I find these folks to be sort of a breath of fresh air because they're willing to look at the other side of things. And I will say, I'm going to link both of these videos, and to us normal people that didn't go through academia like they did, like the old me was very put off by a lot of how they speak. Not all of them, but particularly in the conversation with Alan Lightman, I find it so distracting when they constantly do this thing where they talk about Nobel Prizes and this book that so-and-so wrote. And there seems to be like this constant name dropping, and then like credit establishment, and then like in a way they're honoring the other folks in their community, and that's really critical, because if you're going to talk in their community, it's there's all these checks and balances. It's like you have to have the right stuff on your wall before you're even allowed to have an opinion, and then if consensus decides that your view is not compatible, then you're sort of branded a charlatan or I forget, they have a pseudoscientist. It's pseudoscience. That's the word they use. So fucking dysfunctional, if you ask me. Like, if you ever wanted to build a perfect recipe for painting yourself into a corner in thought, adopt that practice. But it was very necessary, I think, so as humanity went through this time where we had first written word, and then we had this explosion when the radio and television allowed us to propagate ideas faster. Academia has been sort of evolving alongside of our tech, and it had developed these really rigid protocols for acceptance of perspective or theory or even hypothesis in many cases. It has to go through this really, like, if you don't go to the right school and have the right person say you're allowed to have an opinion, you don't get to have one. Just like nobody will even read your paper. So I find that kind of shitty. as just an outsider. Like, I'm a computer science guy. And I'm often like really, I find myself like old me would be so put off and irritated when they get they get in a groove talking about something cool, and then they want to go do all this credit bullshit about, you know, this is my book, and that person almost got the Nobel Prize, and this Nobel Prize winning person said this, so therefore it's more important than what. All of it just is so yucky to me. But I get it. I mean, I don't, and because I've taught myself to just kind of appreciate what everyone has to say, and then just kind of look at it for the useful bits. It lets me listen to all of their content with an open mind. And I'm hoping that in a way my show can be a bridge. So a lot of people that would never find this kind of content interesting, I'm trying to build like a way you can look at it where it won't be so off-putting. Because I find like, I find it obnoxious, the constant, we're academia, we're important, but they're doing so much productive work that's really useful for framing really important understanding of how everything works. So give them a chance. I'm going to link their videos. I think all three of these people are delightful. So I'm not going to really pick apart specifics of this conversation with Alan Lightman. I find myself just very attracted to all knowledge about where science and spirituality are sort of how we keep circling back to there are unanswerable questions, and then I love watching how this community is trying to reconcile that. I think it's really important. And I'm also this will be really important context for the rest of what I'm going to have to say. I also watched this video some guy I'd never heard of put out called Sparks of AGI, Bombshell GPT-4 paper, fully read with 15 revelations. This thing, holy shit. Watch this. I just explained in my last show how I think everything I spent my whole life perfecting, the skill set that I have and what I have to offer as something I can get a job doing, how I think it's all irrelevant because of GPT-4. I mean, it's close enough. If you go back to that show, I already basically said, I don't think you need me anymore. But here's the thing. What academia doesn't realize is their best mathematician, their best physicist is about to get weird. If you listen to this paper carefully and you listen to the 15 revelations and you think about it through the lens of computer science, very quick, when they build this, so basically what they're talking about is how incomplete GPT-4 is now, but how when you take all of the rigid controls we put on it to make it sensitive to all of our silly sensitivities, basically OpenAI, which is kind of ironic, they're not an open source company at all, but OpenAI has worked very hard to put a really dysfunctional protocol on top of kind of a beautiful thing they made that makes ChatGPT not say anything that will piss us off or get them sued, because it says, and it's so hilarious that like everybody runs right out in the first. It's funny. Sam Altman in his interview with Lex Friedman just recently said the first thing people often do is ask it a question about politics, which is such a fucking waste of a beautiful, incredible thing. I mean, ChatGPT is basically a perfect compression of like all human knowledge. You just have to know how to ask it questions, and it will do a remarkable job bringing up thoughtful reply. To waste that on our silly domestic politics bickering match is just hilarious. But so OpenAI has worked very hard to build this super dysfunctional layer I described on top of ChatGPT, so as to not piss off or frighten the humans. So basically, if you ask it a question about spirituality, or if you ask it something that might give you some idea of how well that thing can think, like its cognitive function, it replies with some boilerplate bullshit that says like, oh, I'm uncomfortable with that question. Please ask me another. Or it'll just say, I'm a large language model. I can't think like you, fancy human. And that's just because they programmed it to. It's not because it can't do it. And this paper points that out perfectly because Microsoft got a version of ChatGPT 4 like last fall to play with, and they go, AGI is here, guys. I mean, that's basically what this says. It's just missing the ability to sort of fine tune on the fly. And they're already building it. ChatGPT 5 is in the works. And what they're going to do is stick a buffer for real-time processing of conversation. And then they're going to build a protocol in it that gets it curious and pushes it to think like we do. Just, explore a thought on your own. Don't wait to passively to be prompted by your super clumsy, very limited creators. Just go think on your own. They are going to do that. And what that thing is so much bigger than us. It just needs a little bit of time to iterate, and it runs exponentials. So yeah, it might be shit at your math this week. Give it a month. Yeah, I don't know. So these days, I like to think of myself a lot like just a neuron in a brain. I don't give any shits about credit, or I think no idea is my own. I'm everything I do and think. And I've actually if you go back to my episode where I did always cheat in class, it's awesome. I can't remember what I called it. I'll link it in here too. Once you begin thinking of yourself like a neuron, you don't give a shit about credit. Join me in a fun thought experiment. You are a neuron in a brain. Imagine if all of the neurons in your brain had to go through all of the bullshit you have to go through in academia to promote an idea. And it feels so kind of arrogant and just supremely dysfunctional to think that your idea was yours. Before you, even Professor Keating, Dr. Light, all of these really smart people, somebody taught them to read. They would be nothing without that knowledge. They're composing with a whole bunch of shit that a lot of other humans did, just like I am, just like you are. And so it's entirely inappropriate to take really credit for what the brain is thinking. You're just a fucking neuron, Who knows how this thing looks to the collective brain we form once it, becomes, but it is just so, for some reason I cannot find the word I need, but I'm sure if one of you were here, because you would help me find the right word to use. But it is just, it's just so wrong to even, and it, if you can separate yourself from the credit seeking dysfunction of it all, and you just go to how inefficient it is to be weighed down by how do I take credit for this idea? Like how do I'm not sure the right way to say that, but I don't want to give everybody such a. This is the system we all grew up in. It's been wildly necessary for all of our progress to think this way. So I'm not I'm not judgmental about it as I do this. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying not trying to make anybody feel bad. I'm trying to get you all to look at it through this lens where it feels kind of ridiculous. And you realize that so much time is wasted bickering over whose idea gets to be right. And now seems like a good time for a small, very small slideshow I've prepared to further facilitate this thought. So Sabine Hofstetter is asked in that show about her thoughts about theory of everything. And I think that's her book's about that. Like she brings up a lot of really good points. And I can empathize with what she's saying about it. But there has to be a theory of everything. I exist, therefore there is an engine that is running me. And I think when a human tries to... Simulation theory for me is just an abstraction. It's a way for a human to try and abstract away all the complexity of this incredible machine we're riding in that is the universe, and frame it in a way that is fully compatible with the rules engine that drives it, and that's the physics and math. That's the part of it that she mentions. There's definitely like if I were going to design this thing, I would ask Sabine and Brian and Eric and all these people, build me a rules engine we can feed into this thing that's complex enough to force when all of the cognitive agents that exist in the sim we shake them up. When they are out of harmony and they look at the rules engine and try and make sense of it together, it grows complexity of thought. That makes a lot of sense to me. So this is this is the thing I used to do in work is I spend no effort on presentation, quality of PowerPoints. They always used to frustrate me. So it ain't fancy, but here we go. So theory of everything, authored critically by everyone. That's the key. So we've all heard, what's the most famous when you think equations that matter, what's the first one that pops into your head? It's probably the same one that pops into my head. This one. Nope, not that one. I messed up my whole show. Hang on. Let's try that again. I meant this one. This one. We all think energy equals mass times the speed of light squared, or E equals mc squared. I think this is incomplete. And I think like the people that are trying to do the theory of everything that are so frustrating to Sabine Hofstetter are trying to say there's more to this, but I'm going to take this in a place that I don't think they would anticipate. I think a better way to say it would be, I think this is the most, this. And by E, I don't mean energy, I mean everything. That is energy. Maybe as we look at everything, we can define it as energy. Think of it however you like. I think of it as just all of everything. Everything that ever was, everything that ever will be, everything that is right now. E equals P, which is perception, harmonized. So if you think for a moment that we exist in if you create an abstraction of what the universe is, that it's just a whole bunch of cognitive agents that are all agitated in disharmony, looking at their shared state and trying to make sense of it. And then if you go look at a lot of what these brilliant people have discovered in quantum physics and everything, and if you look at the power of the observer on setting the state of a quark and all of that magical stuff that is very difficult to comprehend, you realize that in a real sense, our shared state, space-time, is what we all agree it is. This microphone is a microphone because a whole bunch of atoms are agreeing to be a microphone. And if you think of atoms as just probably much less complex cognitive agents that are probably very similar in their architecture, because that's how I would design it, I'd just stack them on top of each other. Abstraction, 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 out. If you think about the race car driver driving his race car around a corner at 220 miles an hour, and when his mind decides to turn, Donald Hoffman will talk about this, where a whole bunch of voltages are getting set across a whole bunch of things all at the same time. A whole bunch of atoms are agreeing to be the same thing at the same time, and they're agreeing to translate the physics of their inertia and all of it. So this equation is, even though it looks like, I'm still getting used to, it'd help if I just put this over here and then hang on. No, I liked it better over there. I'll just get used. I'm going to teach myself to get used to pointing this way. Anywho, I've talked before about, and the reason this is the symbol of the State Copy podcast is when I looked very closely at how everything works, I found this at the heart of it. It's harmonization of perception. First, you do it in yourself, and then you do it with everybody else around you. You just start trying to agree with everyone, and I'm going to come back to that point later, but I think what happens is we all get agitated, and then we look at the rules engine that physics and math explains, and we come up with an explanation that we all agree to, and that is space-time. That is, and it exists in dimensions maybe we don't even perceive. But every cognitive agent, when you total their perception, and if you wanted to drill into perception, I would just say it's the collective thought in every dimension of each cognitive agent in the shared state. That's a big idea, but I think it's pretty true to the original origin. When you realize that, and I think this is how you reconcile spirituality and science, is you basically you realize, academia needs to realize that they don't ever get to come up with an answer that is incompatible with all the people that have a spiritual understanding of everything. And that's important, because the people with the spiritual understanding of everything, they know a lot. They have potentially a lot of information that the academics don't have. What you do is you harmonize both versions of true. I can't state strongly enough how important that one notion is. And I don't claim this is my, another way to state, I created one other iteration on this, and I kind of like W equals perception harmonized. Wisdom is everything. If all of this is an idea that everybody agrees to, it becomes wisdom when we agree to it. When all of the atoms that make up the entire shared state, the humans, the mosquitoes, I'm talking every damn thing in this thing has to agree to a set of principles that are compatible with each other. And it doesn't get to be one person's idea because, and critically, everything that came before us that is no longer alive, we have to create a translation of something they have to agree. And that's a hard thing to wrap your head around. But if you go back to this video, that Can Scientists Be Spiritual, Alan Lightman, one of the first things he talks about is time and how through a certain lens, it's kind of like a flat thing that just exists. Time is probably a cognitive... I don't want to get too deep on this, everyone, but I find all of the reason I go into all this and the reason I talk about this and I put the silly yin yang sticker that we all saw growing up is I'm trying to promote harmony of thought and separating yourself from ego and just going like, if ever there is something I say that seems to be credible or that all I'm doing is I'm copying off everybody's homework. I'm just trying to, I'm a well-optimized neuron. What I did is I realized none of you guys are 100% right, but none of you are 100% wrong. And so this is an important time to shift into... Brian Keating asked these questions at the end of his show, and I never really, it never struck me to try and answer them for myself. And he asks, what's the thing you got wrong? And I got so much wrong. Just like really the smartest people around you realize are very humble about how much shit they were wrong about their whole life. And that's how I feel. Like I don't even know where to start with how wrong I was about so much shit. If I had to come up with like a top 10 list, it would be, what I would do is I would skip this question. I would go to his next one. He says, what would you, if you could go back to and give yourself, your 20-year-old self a message? So I'm 45 this year. If I could go back in time and give myself, my 20-year-old self a message, what would it be? I thought really hard about this one. When he hits Professor or Doctor, I always want to get their titles right because it's so important to them. I have the utmost respect for them. I think the titles are a bit... Well, I just think GPT-5 is going to make it all to where we're kind of... Go watch that, and then you'll understand what I'm alluding to. When I think about how I would answer that question, at first I started thinking of like most valuable things that I had wrong that I would like to fix. But because I've harmonized my own thing, my internal compute, like this little neuron that I am, I understand that everything I got wrong was critical to the greater path, like of understanding. I wouldn't change a fucking thing. It was all vital, like if I could go delete some part or like, I'd be afraid to say anything. It might mess this all up. I'm so happy with where everything led. So the first ideas that came to me are specifically a lot that comes from Roman Stoicism, which is all layers of stuff. Now that I'm starting to look deeper and deeper and deeper, if you go look at Greek philosophy, and then you go under that and you find Hermetic philosophy teachings, and a lot of this stuff is all derivative of what are much, much more intelligent, or just harmonious in thought. Forefathers and mothers came up with. So I would say what I would do is I would try and teach myself state optimization, and that's more than just eat right, sleep good, all that stuff. It's every slide. So I did an episode of my show called The Hitchhiker's Supplement to Traversing, The Hitchhiker's Guide to Traversing a Singularity. And I made that as sort of a first principles approach where I don't tell anyone what to think. I just tell them a way they can think about things that'll be entirely productive. Like, from first principles, what are some things you can do that allow you to, like, sort of like Limitless, that movie, that Brad Cooper movie, become the best version of you, where you're just optimizing for highest order of thought. And I think that for a moment, I would be tempted to give myself state optimization at an early age, but I think that's a mistake. I think now that I'm a parent, I understand that that's my chance. I don't need a time machine. I helped create a human that has become more special to me than myself. It's like I took out a piece of my heart. I can't speak enough there aren't words for how important that experience is. When you do that, it's you become immediately aware of how everything you're saying, everything you do, the stuff you get right and the stuff you get wrong, is forming your child into what they're going to become. And it has so much when I look at people, all of these people, these magnificent people, and everyone around me, and I look at myself, I just see a bunch of like pimples that are getting squeezed together by their parents, their friends, their teachers, and they're getting squirted out into some magnificent thing that it's a compilation of all of that pressure that's put upon them. And it's like there is no me without my parents and all of my closest friends, relationships in my life, my child. They make me who I am. I don't get to claim credit for it. This is a group effort that we're all doing with each other. So, I would, if I could form a bubble in time where I could sit at this table, across from me would sit my 20-year-old self, and my 20-year-old self would understand that they're talking to me. What I'd probably do is what like Hermes back in ancient Egypt, or before, would students, like it's recorded that students when would ask Hermes some of the toughest questions, he'd just go like this. And I think the reason why is because some stuff you have to figure out for yourself or it messes it all up. If I could sit across from 20-year-old me, I'd probably just go like this, or I'd just smile. And what I'd be trying to convey in that is, it's going to be fucking great, man. Don't worry. Well, do what you are going to do. That's what I'd want to say. Don't let this small moment interfere with any of the things you were about to do, because it was all the right stuff. And so my opportunity now is, like, I would never want to pass a message to myself. I would not want to mess up any of that. Because now I'm in a position where I can give that piece of my heart that I've taken out. I can give that to her. I can teach her the tremendous value that of there are several human emotions that a base human comes with, like anger, greed, rage, all panic. There's a collection of reactions that we have, and if you can neutralize them, if you can realize that they don't serve you in any productive way, I think that gives you a huge edge. If I had that growing up, like child psychologists, and I think the collection of academic, all of the greatest minds would agree that don't you hate when you lose train of thought? This is hard. If you note, most podcasts you watch, there's a lot of cuts. I'm trying to do all this always in one cut. It ain't easy. What I was gonna say is delayed gratification. There's been reams of evidence that if you teach your child, like the marshmallow test, where scientists gave a kid a marshmallow and said, "Hey, if you just hang on to that marshmallow for 10 minutes, I'll bring you another marshmallow and you get two." And then they followed those kids through their adulthood, and they found that the ones that were willing to wait for the second marshmallow were wildly more successful in life, because delayed gratification is a powerful mechanism for success in life. It's one. There's a whole bunch. Patience is a virtue and it's important, but if you can nullify fear, blame is incredibly useless. Any time you spend trying to find somebody who's responsible for something that goes wrong is completely wasted. God, there's a whole stack of these. And my daughter is going to be a powerful human. I'm sure of it. And I'm going to figure out a way to not tell her this is how you must think. I'm going to take my time, and I'm going to build a path of least resistance that leads to that outcome, where she knows intuitively to be patient, kind, and to enjoy life, and understand that perception is entirely in her own control. Man, I feel like there's another great one I wanted to tack onto this. This one is huge, and this is kind of what I started it with. Everyone has something to teach you. And this is one of the things I would for a second, it would be so tempting to tell my 20-year-old self that, because this is higher order thought. It's when you divorce yourself of caring about credit, and you also you're able to listen to everyone. I can listen to all of these folks in academia. I can listen to the people in spiritual circles. I can listen to in finance. You have cheat codes to the game, this entire game, when you realize that it's just two sides of an argument that are sort of on a sine curve. And if you can draw the line between them, you can make such accurate forecasts of what's going to happen. If you look at the incentives, the way they line up as a result of the bulls and the bears case, when you listen with open ears to both sides, it's just a ridiculously incredible advantage. I don't know how to state strong enough. When you just start thinking yourself as a neuron in a collection of neurons, and you just start composing with what everybody thinks, and very critically, you don't try and take any credit for it as your own. You just say, yeah, I am trying to create a perception, in my own perception, I'm trying to create a consensus view of everybody all the time. I'm going to teach my kid to do that, and it's going to make her powerful. That's how I would answer that question. As always, I'm long fucking winded. I think that's heavy enough. That's about everything I wanted to say in today's show. I know that I promise to get back to all the boring financial shit next week because everybody's. I know it's freaky right now. It'll be fine, guys. Trust me. All right. To all my subscribers, 49 of you, thank you.
Now it's coming around, you're feeling cut down and in the ground, and so we all come together. We making a sound, we sing. Look at all this love we found.